Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to just kind of start something a bit new, which is a hopefully monthly repeating video that I'll do every month. And it's just kind of like a recap of things that I found interesting or things that I enjoyed throughout the month. And hopefully you'll find it interesting as well. I've put timestamps in the description, so if you want to skip to a different area of the video, depending on what you're interested in, then feel free to use them. The 4 areas that I wanted to just sort of talk about is books, tech, habits, and music. I'm just going to talk a bit about each and kind of, what's been interesting me. So in April, I read 4 books, which is kind of a bit less than I normally would read. There were 3 books that I wanted to just briefly talk about that I thought were pretty interesting. The first book was Atomic Habits. You might have read it yourself, but I found it a really good book in terms of talking about how to develop new habits and how making small changes in your life can equate to a massive difference in the long run. And the key thing that I really liked and took away from this book is the idea that your habits really come from your identity. Your habits come from who you believe about yourself. And I never quite thought about habits being related to that directly. Like, I've thought a lot about identity over the years, but I've never related it to habits. And he talked a lot in the book about how if your identity is someone who is a reader, then you're going to read a lot of books. Whereas if your identity is someone who doesn't read, then you're never ever going to start reading, because that's not what your identity is. And so he said, basically, the way to change your habits is to change your identity first, and your habits will follow, which I thought was a really interesting idea. And I've definitely been trying to incorporate that into my own life more recently. So yeah, highly recommend that book. The next book that I wanted to talk about was Stoner by John Edward Williams. And I decided to read this book just because there was a couple of YouTubers that I am interested in who recommended it. I'd heard of it recommended by a couple of other people. I can't remember who it was. It kind of interests me. It's a novel, and it's basically the story of a man who grows up and becomes a teacher, and it's kind of just his life story. And I found it really sad, actually. It was a really sad book. I definitely understand the appeal. Like, it's a really well written book and really interesting, but at the same time it's very bleak, and it ends up being quite sad. Not to give away the ending or anything, but it just wasn't a particularly uplifting book. I appreciate that. I think some people who recommended it said that it shows that even mundane human lives are still beautiful and are to be appreciated, which I definitely appreciate, but I found it more depressing than uplifting, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It's an interesting read, but not for everyone. And then the third book that I read that I really actually loved was probably my favorite book of April, which was Show Your Work. And I've talked about it in some previous videos as well. It's written by a guy called Austin Kleon, and it's kind of about how, particularly for creative people, they should show their creative process rather than keeping it all to themselves. And you should show and display your work to other people, because it's part of the process. And it's a good way of developing your work and getting feedback and then iterating and improving on it. And so I think that's definitely inspired me and encouraged me to make more YouTube videos, for example, because again, it's all a learning process. And I think the more I show what I'm doing and get feedback on it, hopefully the more I'll be able to develop and grow as a person. And I just think for anyone really who's creative in the 21st century, it's got a very sort of heavy emphasis on us being in the digital age with the internet. I think it's a really, really good read for anyone who wants to develop and improve their work. So yeah, I really loved it. Highly recommend it. Definitely give it a read. Anyway, the next thing I wanted to talk about from the month of April was just about some tech. Obviously, I've been doing more YouTube videos, and all the gear that I currently am using, I already had. I already had tripods, had the camera, I've got a light box here, but I didn't have a microphone. And I started off using just the microphone on the camera, but it was pretty bad audio. If you go back and watch any of my first videos, the audio is pretty bad, and so I decided to invest in a Rode Videomic Pro. It's the first external microphone I've ever bought for myself. I've used external microphones in the past for other video stuff, but I've never had one of my own, so I Found one actually secondhand on Facebook. Picked it up and I've been loving it. It's really good. I think the audio is much better. It's really easy to use and it just makes life so much easier. I don't have to spend ages trying to fix the audio in post from my camera audio. I can just use pretty much straight out of the box the audio that comes from the Videomic Pro. So I'm super happy about that purchase. Hopefully it makes a difference in the videos. So the third area I wanted to talk about from April was my habits. And inspired partly by the Atomic Habits book, I decided to get back into the routine of getting up early every morning. I did it for probably, I want to say 6 months, maybe a year ago, where I was consistently getting up early every morning, but fell out of the habit maybe 6 months ago. And I decided, why not get back into it right now? Particularly while I'm trying to get a bit more stuff done, with YouTube and work and other things. So I've been making the effort to get up every morning at 6:30, and I've been pretty consistent over the last month. The last week or so I haven't been so consistent, but overall I've been pretty consistent, and 100%, I really love getting up early. It makes such a difference. I feel like by the time I get to 2 or 3 p.m, I feel like I've pretty much done a full day's work, and I've still got 3 or 4 hours of working time to keep getting stuff done, and I love that. I feel like I can get so much stuff done even before breakfast, and so my days just feel so much more productive, and it's great. I love it. The biggest thing definitely is making sure I get to bed early enough, because if I don't get to bed early enough, then inevitably it's a real struggle getting up early. If you're trying to get into the habit of waking up early, highly recommend going to bed in good time. I usually aim to get to bed at 10:30, and then I get up at 6:30. So hopefully this month I'll continue the habit. But say I was to get up at 6:30 every morning instead of 8:30. So I have an extra 2 hours a day to get stuff done. Over the course of just 1 week, that's an extra 14 hours that I have to get stuff done to be more productive, which over the course of a year, that adds up to 728 hours, which is 30 days. So you're basically adding a full extra month of 24-hour days to your year to get stuff done. And to me, it's just a no-brainer. Like getting up an extra 2 hours earlier, and you can get a full month of extra work done. Why not? And so finally, the last thing I wanted to just mention was what I've been into musically the last month or so. And definitely number one on the list is Hillsong Young and Free. If you haven't heard Hillsong Young and Free, go and check them out. Particularly they've released 3 singles now, 3 new singles, and all of them are amazing. Absolutely love them. So I highly recommend that if you're looking for some new music to listen to. So that's basically my April recap. I'll hopefully do a recap for May in about a month's time. But yeah, let me know what you've been interested in this month. Any books, any music, tech, habits, whatever, anything you've been interested in recently. Let me know in the comments. I'll be keen to hear what you've been into as well. Other than that, hopefully I'll see you in the next video on Friday.